All right, we are entering a new era of real estate, and starting August 17th, there's a lot of changes going into place where they didn't exist before. And so I'm really creating this video because it's super important that there is clarity and that there is confidence moving forward with the real estate market, not only for my home buyers, but also for my home sellers who are planning to sell their home in the future. And separately, I'm going to be making a video specific about real estate agents and having to change the way they're doing a couple of things in their business. So make sure you bookmark this, make sure you send it to a friend who's interested in buying or selling this year. And also, I just want you to comment below if you have questions, if you want to know more about specific topics, if you want a one-on-one scenario that might be a one-off chance. There's just so much discussion going on between my coworkers and also between my clients. And so it's more important than ever that we have clarity and, like I said, confidence moving forward. So let's get into it. What are the big changes happening in real estate and why do you need to know? For those who don't know, NAR is the National Association of Realtors, and this is kind of the governing body for any real estate agent that abides by their code of ethics. So fun fact, you can't actually call yourself a realtor, T-O-R at the end, unless you are part of this association. Unless you didn't have that, you would just be called a regular real estate agent, right? You wouldn't be a realtor. But because we've chosen to abide to this code of ethics, we pay this membership fee every year, we have to abide by these rules. So what happened, and I'm just gonna read this so I get this correct. In 2019, a group of Missouri home sellers filed a class action lawsuit against the NAR, claiming antitrust violations and alleging that its practices inflated commissions. The jury ended up siding with the plaintiffs and awarded a nearly $1.8 billion verdict against the powerful trade group that represents about 1.5 million real estate professionals last October. So this is almost a year ago now, and we've been knowing that this is coming up. Changes to the industry are happening. In May, they announced some of the initial changes, and now August 17th, they are officially rolling into action. So to settle that lawsuit, along with very similar suits, NAR agreed to pay $418 million to people who have sold homes in the recent years. The group also agreed to two big rule changes. So number one change is that when agents list homes on the MLS, which is our multiple listing services, that's our platform where anytime you list a home, you put it on this portal and it blasts out to Zillow and everywhere else, right? So anytime we put something on the MLS now, you will not be able to include the buyer's agent's compensation. So for context, normally right now I could go to the MLS and I can see here's this beautiful home for sale, and at the very bottom it says buyer's agent compensation is 2% or 2.5%. So I know initially if I bring my house to this client and I end up getting an offer accepted, I can expect a 2% paycheck. Now that is no more. That is not going to exist on this portion of the MLS. The other thing is buyers are going to need to have written agreements with their buyer's agent. This was some standard practices for certain companies, but not everybody did it. And now this is basically going to lock you in to say a mutual agreement of I agree to work with you and you agree to work with me. And that is that. We are in a mutual agreement. We are in a marriage for our home buyer's journey. Okay, so these are two big changes. No more on MLS, you're going to say how much you're going to offer to the buyer. And now no more our buyer is going to be able to go around free willy-nilly. Like the way that I kind of think of it is like being a single man dating everyone versus being a married couple and being fully committed. Like we're kind of making the mature involvement here, okay? So NAR denied any wrongdoing in settling these lawsuits. And just again, for context, like example, if you would have sold a $500,000 condo, you would usually expect to pay about $25,000 to $30,000 in commissions. Because previous to this, when you sign a listing agreement, you're saying my total amount of commission I'm willing to pay is anywhere from like 5 to 6 to even 7%, depending on the property. And out of that total amount, a certain percentage will go to the buyer's agent. So it would have a total amount is going to pay 6%, let's say, and out of that, 3% is going to go to the buyer's agent. Well, now moving forward, that's not the case. We're going to have new paperwork that says, as a listing agent, I'm only going to charge you my services, and the buyer's agent has to have their own contract solely with the buyer. So the listing agent and the seller is no longer responsible for the buyer's agent commission. But we're going to talk about what that means for negotiating and how every property is going to be totally different. So what does this whole settlement do for the industry? Why is it good? Why is it maybe bad? Like, what are some of the concerns you should have? Number one, it's ultimate transparency in regards to real estate commission structures. So you're going to know exactly who gets paid and how they get paid. There's no blurry lines. There's no gray area. There's no as a listing agent, I'm going to charge 6%, but depending on what the buyer's agent, I can decide what to pay them. Like, it's just very clear on who gets paid and how. Number two, you have the reduction of anti-competitive practices. So let's say, like previous to this too, if I saw a listing is only offering 1% commission as a buyer's agent, you could potentially steer a client away from that listing because you wouldn't get paid as much. Not to say I've ever done that. I hope people don't do that, but I've heard that that could be some steering practices. I mean, now it's totally going to be open conversation, and it's going to have to be clearly outlined of how that's going to happen. The other one is enhanced consumer protections. So these new measures are really there to help prevent unfair practices, ensuring that both buyers and sellers receive their fair treatment. And last thing is those changes to those listing agreements, making sure that we know exactly how things are being structured and how we're interacting with their mutual clients. So let's go into, if you are a home buyer, someone who is looking to purchase a home for the foreseeable future, I'm not even gonna say in the next 6 months, like this is something that everyone should know, from Gen Z up to boomers, that's in the real estate market, like it is your time, right? So starting in August 17th, that is the date you need to have in your mental calendar, and that all of us professionals are very much aware of, and we're starting to place these things into practice today. You will need to have a written agreement with your agent before you tour any home. So no longer can you call an agent on Zillow and just go to Joe Schmo listing, whatever, without any paperwork. Now we will have to send you a digital copy of something that you click and e-sign and just say, I agree to work with this buyer's agent. Now, before you get into the nitty-gritty on that, you need to know how to navigate these new documents, and I wanna make sure that you're up to speed on what you're signing. So as part of this, I'm gonna link below a Google Drive folder that's gonna have these documents, just so you can kind of see before you go into it, of like, this is what I'm signing, and potentially this is the questions I should ask my agent before I sign something, okay? You can also determine on these, are you signing a representation agreement for one property, for 5 properties, for a certain time period? Maybe it's just 1 day or 2 days with this agent if you just want to test the waters, or are you going to sign and commit to them for a year? Really just depending on the person and the trust that you have with these agents. But so often, I mean, we are used to being double and triple dated, meaning like you could see 3 agents within 1 day going to different properties, and I wouldn't always know if we have a commitment together. And so I would be working for free doing all these showings, and sometimes people don't buy, right? And so you are still on the hook for your time, and that was part of this industry that we signed up for. But now you're gonna say on this buyer's agreement that I agree to work with this agent for a set amount of time, and this is exactly what the buyer's agent is going to charge me for their services. So this can be negotiated by a dollar amount. You can say by a flat fee, by a percent, maybe an hourly rate, but it cannot be open-ended and it cannot be ambiguous or a range. It must be very, very specific. So this is something your agent is going to need to communicate with you with on exactly what they expect to be paid for their services, okay? So let's say, and this is really important for my first-time home buyers, and especially my VA buyers, we don't usually have a lot of cash to start the home buying process. Usually we have the bare basics, our credit score might be mid, but you are just trying to get into a home, right? So you don't have a ton of savings on the side. And now all of a sudden you're expected to pay this buyer agent compensation for their work. You're paying a professional, just like you would pay a lawyer or you would pay a doctor for their services. You are expected to pay a buyer's agent. And so we're thinking, how in the heck are buyers gonna do this? So there's a thing called seller credit. And this has been pretty popular over the last couple of years post-pandemic, where we can offer on a property and we can say, hey, we're gonna give you this amount, but I want seller credit to be refunded back to me as the buyer to pay for certain things. So most commonly we see this when it comes to buying down your interest rate or covering your closing costs. Well, now we're gonna be able to say, we actually wanted to pay for our buyer's agent fee. So you still have the potential to really do a 0 down VA loan or a 3% FHA loan or whatever that minimum entry point is on a first-time buyer's loan, and ask for credit to cover your buyer's agent, okay? And this is really gonna be property to property specific, but you have to have this on your radar of like, we gotta get creative on pretty much every single property. It's gonna be up to your buyer's agent to speak to that listing agent and say, hey, what wiggle room do we have here? What can we negotiate on the table? This is how much it costs to work with me, and I need to make sure my client can get this home, okay? So understanding seller credit is a big part of this. The last tip I really have for buyers is just understanding there's going to be more strategy talks and more consulting with your lender and your buyer agent team than we've ever done before, because there's so much differentiators between each property. It's no more that you can just have your like initial pre-approval conversation and then go on showings and submit an offer, like where the lender's in the back. The lender is very much going to be intimate, involved in every single conversation. And it's more important than ever to vet and interview not only realtors. I want you to talk to 3 to 5 if you can, interview them. I'll also link below, I have a guide to 20 questions to ask your realtor to make sure you're hiring a professional one and one that treats their business like a business. And then also your lender, you should know, is this lender, do they have the experience that's needed? Do they have the skill set? Do they have the creative solutions that's needed in this new change time? Okay, so don't just go with the cheapest rate. Don't just go with your big bank. You want to talk to multiple people, and usually your buyer's agent can connect you with someone that they love to work with. I definitely have 3 to 5 that are my top, so just ask me if you guys need tips. Let's go into the impact for home sellers. So you're a home homeowner, and now all of a sudden you gotta list your home. But what does this mean for you, right? The biggest thing that I keep hearing about, and it's been all over the media, is that the 6% commission is dead. It's no more. That's like initially what came out. It got smeared all across the media, and it was a complete lie. It's never been a 6% set commission. Never, ever, ever. Commission has always been negotiable. So when I go on a listing presentation, you express interest to me that you want to sell your home. I come over, I tour it, we sit down and we talk numbers, and I say, hey, this is typically what I charge. These are all the things I include. What do you think about that price? And then you can tell me, you can say, actually, that's a little steep. I don't know if I want to pay that. Or you can say, that's a great number. Let's do it. And usually if you tell me it's a little bit too much, I'm going to say, okay, well, then I'll need to take off a couple of things that I offer to you, but there are ways to make this work for a win-win, right? There's always room for negotiation and making sure that both parties get what they want. Also knowing, like I said, for the buyer portion, we've got to be open to seller credit, meaning if someone submits an offer to us, no more are we just concerned about the top line offer. We are more than ever protecting our bottom line. What is your actual take home after all expenses, after all credits are paid to buyers? What is your take home pay? So one thing that I think might be changing here is our pricing strategy. And this is kind of an unknown of how it's really going to lay out. But previous, you would look at the comps of your area, the comparable sales, to determine your price. And you'd say, hey, based on the condition of the home, based on the market value, I'm gonna list at X amount because I feel like this is the number that's gonna move it the fastest and get the most amount of offers. A really competitive price, right? Well, now we're in territory where we might be getting offers way higher than our list price because they want credit back. So the buyer is trying to protect your bottom line as well, right? To have a competitive offer. Well, what happens when we're offering $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 over your list price? If there's not comparable sales that high, we are at risk for a low appraisal. And if the buyer cannot get an appraisal on their loan for that dollar amount, guess what? We got to renegotiate and readjust those credits or bring the price down or risk cancellation. And so it's going to be curious to see, like, are sellers going to be listing higher so that they can negotiate those credits down? Are they going to be listing lower so people can offer over? I don't know yet. And so this is going to be an interesting next 6 months to see what a lot of agents start to do and what their strategy is. But I think more than ever, you've got to lean on your listing agent to see how confident are you on the comparable sales and how are we going to negotiate this new trajectory of so much credit negotiation? Okay. So knowing your net sheet, asking that with your title company is going to be really important. So you have kind of a strategy moving forward. So my advice for you, so how you can best prepare and adapt these new rules, again, it's hiring a really good listing agent. Like, I mean, you've got to run them through the ringer, vet them out, look at their past sales and transactions. If they haven't sold more than 6 homes in the last 6 months, you might want to look at someone else who has a lot more experience under their belt. There's just been so many changes with the rules, with the paperwork. It's more important than ever that your agent understands these new policies so that you are protecting yourself and the investment of your home. Okay, the last thing for home sellers is just to be a savvy consumer. So you're gonna wanna do your due diligence and your research. You're not gonna wanna keep your head in the sand about this. You wanna be ahead of it and proactive. So when the time comes to sell, you know what you're walking into, right? So if that's you, if you're within that 6-month window period of about to sell, I want you to reach out to me via email and just say, hey, I know I've got to sell this time period. Maybe you've got orders or you're planning a move to your job. Let's start the conversation now so we can proactively plan and kind of chunk out your timeline on what your options are. Okay. So like how we said, how the NAR is no longer allowing you to advertise your compensation on the MLS. It doesn't mean that you can't advertise it at all. Like, full stop. It does mean we got to get creative now too. And this is something that you can talk about and interview your listing agent on, is if you're not going to be like offering credits or commissions on the MLS, how are we going to incentivize buyers to offer on my home? Well, there's a lot of different ways to do this. So one of them might be, we could put it specifically on my website. We could say in the notes or a blog post or a social media post, or even on my rider signs in your yard sign that we are offering some credit or some percentage back to buyers agents. That's a great way to incentivize this. Now, one tip I have for sellers is don't get fixed on a percentage or a set dollar amount, because if the buyer's agent, now we're going to have Wild West of all these buyer's agents charging different fees. If the buyer's agent's fee that they've set with their buyer is actually lower than what you're offering, you're committed now to paying that. So what my advice is just to say that you're negotiable to compensate buyer's agents, but we don't have to say how and we don't have to say too much. Okay. So that's one asterisk I want you to save there. But to sum this up, I mean, really it's going to be there might be some more changes in the future. And as much as it's fun and entertaining to watch mainline media, I want you to stay really close in touch with your agent. Hopefully that's me. And I can keep you on the inside scoop of what's going on specifically with my brokerage, how eXp Realty is handling this and being super proactive and protective for our clients. And I just want you to be an educated consumer, because whether you're planning to buy this year or sell next year, this is going to affect us in some way or another and potentially have big impacts on the overall real estate market. So I hope this video was helpful. Like I said, there's going to be some really great links below for you to resource. Look at these forms, see what they're asking you to fill out, so you go into the conversation educated, and your agents are really going to have to guide you through this to not only present all the options, but help you decide what is the best choice for you and your family in this situation. So I hope this helps, and I will see you guys next week with another video.